Catch You Outdoors, presented by the Waypoint Podcast Network at waypointtv.com. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modes, reporting to listeners each week from the Florida Keys. This week's episode is number 68. Here, Fishy, Fishy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another adventure in podcast broadcasting. Another week has passed. I can't believe it. I'm recording this on Sunday just for reference points. I like to start that off just to let you know what's going on out there. You're going to listen to this on a Tuesday, so anything can happen on Monday and I won't know about it. Well, I will, but it won't be on here. The title of this week's podcast was selected to send my best to a best friend's wife up in Louisville, Kentucky. Cindy was recently diagnosed with cancer, something I've been fighting for almost 8 years now. My best to her and her husband, Gary. So the title here, Fishy Fishy, is something Cindy would say whenever the bite was slow, and it really seemed to work for her and everyone else that was on the boat or on the shore or on the dock with her. It's been around for a long time. You can go online and find T-shirts with it all over the place. And I've been in marinas where they actually sell it in marinas. Here, Fishy, Fishy. It's just this. Historically, it started with the, let's see, what did it start with? Oh, yeah, Sesame Street. Bert and Ernie on a boat. Yeah, if you look it up on YouTube and just do Bert and Ernie, Here, Fishy, Fishy, the skit will come up. But that's where it was first seen. So there you go. There's some trivia piece for you. Anyway, I hope she gets better over the long haul. It's not fun. Been there, done that. I've been surviving it now for, like I said, almost 8 years. My diagnosis was in February, so I'm getting pretty close to 8 years. And it's a battle, and it never stops. That's what sucks about cancer. But hopefully she'll be doing good. I know she's got what's required, and that's an attitude. Cindy's always had an attitude. It's the Cindy attitude. Yeah, so hopefully she keeps that going, and I know she's got a good support team there because Gary was great with me when I was really sick. He and she were both very, very helpful. Took care of the house for a whole month while we were gone. So that's cool. Very cool. Made my return this past week to my YouTube channel. I had a channel way back. As a matter, I went and looked at the videos. The last video was 7 years ago. Ooh, so you know what happened there, right? I was doing them for my charters. I was putting together some fishing stuff, promotional stuff for my charter, things like that. And I loved it. I got into it big time. I loved shooting the videos. That was the early GoPro days and the early drone days. I was using DJI drones, and I just really got into it. And, of course, it fell by the wayside. Well, now it's back. I've been shooting a lot of stuff with the GoPro now, just as stills as well as video. And I've taken the drone out for sunset shots and aerial shots of the Florida Keys. The drones have gotten way better. They've gotten more legal, which is important. I mentioned this in my Christmas gift thing, I believe, a few weeks back. Drones have gotten real small, and they started to weigh less than the 300 grams. And so that puts them out of the FAA category for registration. You still have to obey all the rules. You can't fly one around an airport unless you want to get arrested or in any other secured airspace. But it allows you to fly one much more easily. They're so responsive. They're little. They're easy. They handle wind much better than they used to. So I've been shooting some pictures, and I've got all this collection. And I thought, man, I got to do something with this stuff. So I was like, well. So I went back and looked at the YouTube channel. I changed the name. It's still under Rob Modes. So if you want to search that, you can hit that. Plus, you'll hit all the other strange videos I did with news programs and stuff like that back when. But anyway, the channel's called Catch You Outdoors, just like the podcast is. So it's easy to find. And I added a new one this past week, just a real quickie, about a minute and a half, maybe close to 2 minute, called My Key Largo. I shot some aerial shots, some sunrises, some sunsets, things like that. Put a little music on. I'm just experimenting, really, see if I can still do it. And it came out pretty good. So I'm going to try to put those out every week for you. Kick back, enjoy. I'm not going to be selling you anything on it. I'm just going to put pretty pictures up there. So let's see. Oh, I'll be a stand-in. I'll be a stand-in host for Real Talk Radio next Saturday. So you're listening Tuesday, so it'll be this coming Saturday, so to speak. January 14th, Captain Debbie Hansen, who is now the host of my former show, is taking some time off, and you can listen to me if you're not in the Fort Myers area and not been able to go to one of the local ESPN stations. You can listen to me on the ESPN Southwest Florida app. Just download the app. It's the easiest way to go. ESPN Southwest Florida. Look it up under the App Store. Download it. You can click on that. I'll be on from 7 to 10 in the morning on Saturday. My guest and sidekick will be Mr. Nick Davis, the owner of 239 Flies in Bonita Beach, on Bonita Beach Road. Nick is a blast. I think Debbie's very worried about what's going to happen to her show. Turning the two of us loose on it while she's gone for 3 hours could be detrimental to Real Talk's health, but we shall see. Nick and I absolutely adore fishing. There's no other word for it. And we like each other a lot, so we get along really well. He is a fly fishing freak, and he has spun me in that direction. When I was, I did a lot of spin fishing when I was a guide. I didn't do a lot of fly on the boat because people didn't ask for it. Maybe once a week. And that I considered that lucky if I got one. That's changed now. Fly fishing now in Southwest Florida has really come on over the last 10 years. And Nick, I think, I think he's directly responsible for that, quite frankly. So he's very enthusiastic. He's crazy as hell, and he's a lot of fun to get on the show. And I'll be doing my damnedest to keep him from cussing on the air, which is not allowed. You can get away with that on podcasts, but you can't do it when you're on radio. But we enjoy each other, and we enjoy talking about fishing. So please tune in. I think it'll be a real blast to get with us. That's this Saturday, the 14th, from 7 in the morning to 10 a.m. You can listen to it on ESPN Southwest Florida's app. Let's see. What else is on the list? Don't worry, I'm going to get to Fishy here in a little bit. I got lots of fishy talk to talk about, and I've added an extra 15 minutes to my podcast, so they run 40 to 45 minutes now. So I have more time. This is fun. Excuse me, on the weekend of January 21, 22, that's the following weekend, I'll be doing seminars at the Islamorada Boat Show here in the Florida Keys. How about that? Look for me if you're in the area, if you're here for the boat show. I've done hundreds of seminars and fishing-related classes over the years, but this will be the first time I've done anything in the Keys like that. I was part of the George Poveromo stuff when we were doing the talks, the seminars, and more specifically the Mako tournaments. And I came here for a Mako tournament years ago that was hosted out of Islamorada. And that's the only thing I've really done related other than coming and doing private fishing charters and fishing trips and the Swamp Guides Ball, stuff like that that's held in Islamorada. But so this will be a first for me to actually stand up and talk. I'm going to cover kayak fishing. It's what I know. I mean, I'm new to the area, but I'm not new to fishing here. Janelle and I got here in, I guess it was July. Yeah, July/August. No, I think it was July. Anyway, and that's where I really started to pound the backwaters here with the kayak and learn an awful lot about it. I've been kayak fishing on the Southwest coast and on the Fort Lauderdale area. I fished down here from starting back in the mid-'90s. Well, actually, I fished in '89, technically. First few times I fished were in the late '80s. But so I know my way around, but I had never really done it much with a kayak, and I've learned a lot, and I'm going to pass it along. I was asked to do this seminar about it. So there you go. The Islamorada Boat Show. It's held obviously in Islamorada. Duh. So 21-22 for that. I'll talk about it again next week and give you more specifics on how to find it and where it is and all that kind of stuff. Last but not least, my wife and I attended the 10th annual Florida Keys Celtic Festival in Marathon yesterday. It was great. I'm highly Scottish. I'm crazy Scottish. I play the bagpipes. For those of you that don't know, I started playing the bagpipes when I was 10 years old, and I even won a couple of championships for individual piping up at Grandfather Mountain, North Carolina at the Highland Games. I'm very proud of that. That's a fairly prestigious event here in the United States. And yes, I still play, and I enjoy playing. And the way I get inspired is to go to these Highland Games and these Celtic festivals and things like that. This was much larger than I thought it was going to be. When they said marathon in the Keys, go to Janelle's like, let's go to the Celtic thing. I'm okay, all right, fine. I pictured something much smaller. It was big stage, great entertainment, pipe bands. Let's see, who else was there? The Byrne Brothers. They're great, fantastic music. Abenach. Oh wow, you want to look up an insanely crazy Scottish traditional, 1300s, 1400s style band. Check it out. Abenach's pretty cool. Let's see what else. The Screaming Orphans were there. The Police Pipe and Drum Corps was there. And all kinds of entertainment, sheepdog herding, all the things that they usually bring to this stuff. Lots of great shops and things to look at, good food. But anyway, I was very impressed. This was the 10th annual. I didn't find this out actually until I'm standing there with Janelle, and she explained to me what's going on with this thing. The event's put on by the St. Columba Episcopal Church in Marathon, and it's to support a place called the Hammock House, which is pretty impressive. It's a free after-school and camp program. Free. Get that for kids. When they get out of school, they can go to the Hammock House, and they can basically be taken care of, entertained, do camp for nothing. And I was just like, wow, I'm just blown away. They have done that through ticket sales over the 10 years and donations. They also have a thrift shop called the Nearly New Thrift Boutique. I love that. They've raised $1 million to enable the Hammock House to benefit hundreds of kids and families in the city of Marathon. And in addition, they annually offer 2 college scholarships to graduating seniors from the Marathon High School. I think that's really cool. So. And again, like I said, for those of you that don't know, I play the pipes, so of course I'm kind of ate up by this stuff. But more importantly, I think what the Episcopal Church did down there to support kids after school is that's very impressive. I'm really proud of them, very proud of them. Yes, when I play the pipes, I think what I'm going to do, I was thinking about this on the drive back from Marathon yesterday. I think I'm going to compete with the bar across the street. The Caribbean Club is literally across the street. For those of you that know the Keys, when you come on to Key Largo, you drive just a few miles down the road. On the right is the Caribbean Club on the bay side. This is where the original Key Largo movie was filmed with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and others. It was the storefront used, I guess, to represent the hotel, as I remember. I need to go back over there and look at the stuff they've got hanging up, but maybe get a T-shirt. But anyway, I think it'd be fun. When I'm grilling in the backyard, I can hear the band over there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mostly Friday, Saturday. The band's playing. You can hum along. Fortunately, they don't play real late, which is good. That's okay. But I really don't care. It's the Keys, for crying out loud. And there's dancing and carrying on going on. And it can be everything from rock to country. You'll hear just about everything. And usually I'm in the backyard working on the grill and the bass line starts. And I'm like, oh, I know that song. And so I thought it'd be kind of fun maybe when the band takes a break to play the bagpipes in my backyard just to freak them out. And then I'm going to go over there and say, have you guys been hearing bagpipes? It's kind of weird. Are there any rumors about, ancient pipers on the Florida Keys? Just sort of wind them up and see what I can do to get them going. It's fun to do that. It really is. Okay, it's time to get to the meat of this here Fishy podcast. First of all, fishing has been great in the Florida Keys. That's all there is to it. There are reports of sailfish in close. There are reports of mahi in close. That would be dolphin fish for those of us that have been around for a long time. Mahi. It was named that. It was named that by the Hawaiians, if I'm not mistaken. But for the sake of the United States, especially the Florida Keys, where we catch a lot of dolphin fish, there was some confusion. People would go to a restaurant, look at the menu, and see dolphin on the menu, and just absolutely freak out because they're pretty sure it was flipper. And we're like, no, that's not what it is. Calm down. So most restaurants you go to now do not say dolphin on the menu, or even dolphin fish on the menu. It says mahi. So anyway, they're in close, big ones. I mean, close. They're right on the drop off. From what everything I've heard from everybody is like they're on the drop off. So you go out to where it's 16, 17, 18 feet of water, and you start searching where it drops off to about 100 to 300 feet, which you could probably kayak to if you're industrious. I won't, but there are people that can certainly get there. Because you're only talking a few miles out when you hit the drop off. So anyway, that's been exciting. And the sailfish fishing apparently is just taken off all of a sudden. The reports are starting to come out of Islamorada, Marathon, in that area. And so it's, and Key West for that matter. The bite on yellowtail has been incredible. I got to get out there. I'm going to book me an offshore charter is what I'm going to do and just go fishing. I've got to go out there and experience this while it's happening. This is typical for the Florida Keys this time of year. When things get cold everywhere else, we don't. However, we get cooled down. We get temperatures in the 60s at night and high 70s to right at 80 during the day. Water temperature in the Gulf Stream sticks at around 74, 75 degrees. The fish move in because the bait moves in, and you start getting ballyhoo, threadfin herrings, white bait, stuff like that getting closer to shore. It's just over. Things are going to happen. So I'm really excited about that. In the back country where I've been fishing, I've been having a blast. Lots of bites. It's mainly cudas. I don't know what to do. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. I'm going to talk about lure presentation and stuff like that as we go along. This is going to be more about fishing this time around than in a while. But I think the biggest mistake I'm making is throwing too much flashy stuff around. I like to use artificials, and so that's going to happen when you do that. I think if you chunk some bait up underneath the bushes, some cut bait, mullet, things like that, I might be better off at catching mangrove snapper and things. And I'm seriously thinking about taking a chum bag on the kayak, anchoring and chumming. Yep, I got plans. I'll be reporting on it. Don't you worry. But we're in that usual winter pattern now, and the water warmed up after that crazy nonsense we had at Christmas. Now, I know the rest of you suffered if you're listening anywhere if you're listening anywhere in Florida, from Fort Myers, Miami up, it was cold. I had to put shoes on, man, and long pants. And I finally relented after 3 days and turned the daggone heat on. Inside our house, in the Florida Keys, dropped to 63 degrees one morning. I'm like, okay, I've had enough. I'm raising the temperature. So anyway, I was happy to see the water warm up. So weather-wise, that has been a big learning curve for me here in the Keys. I adapted to it really well in the Fort Myers area because I grew up on the Clearwater area in Tampa, so it's not that much different. Clearwater, of course, would get colder in the winter than Fort Myers would, but we still shared the same cold fronts typically. That doesn't happen down here. So things are really a whole lot different. But I've learned more and more and more every time I've gone out, of course, reading, listening to fishing reports, things like everybody else does, reading books like the ones I wrote. So the learning curve is, I'm doing what everybody else does. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, weather-wise, what happens here is the water will chill a little bit during a cold, but it doesn't do anything like it does anywhere else in Florida, even in our bays down here. Florida Bay will chill down real fast because the water's shallow and adapt to it'll start to match the lower temperatures during the night kind of thing. But the fish don't migrate like they do on the west coast of Florida, where they disappear. They run back to the mangroves. These fish pretty much, if there's sunshine, they're going to stay out. That was one of the problems with the Christmas cold. The sun didn't come out for like 4 days. It stayed overcast. And that really shut things down quite a bit. So, but now we're in this whole what the locals here call a weather pattern that's solid. That's a winter weather pattern. In other words, it's going to be 60-something at night, and it's going to be in the middle 70s, high 70s during the day. It's going to be sunny, which is going to warm the top of the water rapidly, so shallow water fishing is going to be a blast. When I went out kayaking on Thursday, I went back up into Largo Sound and went way up to the insides of it, up into the heavy mangrove areas. And it was, I love using this word, it was magical. It really was. There were fish everywhere. The trouble I have is catching the snapper. The snapper have become extremely shy and run away. And so one of the guys I talked to about it, he says, chum. He said, just put some chum in the water and draw them out of the mangroves. Just get them out to you. And then I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. I just never really thought about doing that in a foot and a half of water. I don't know. Okay, sure. And then throw your artificials, he said. And they'll just chomp on them. I'm like, okay, that's good advice. The problem is cudas, barracudas. Now, here I am saying they're a problem, and I love to catch them. Barracuda in the Keys are like jacks on the west coast of Florida. They're everywhere. And jacks are a day saver the Jacques Crevel is a day saver in Southwest Florida from 10,000 Islands all the way up to the Fort Myers, Punta Gorda area. They are always there. When it gets cold, they're there. When it's warm, they're there. They love to eat. They run in huge schools. They're great to cast to, and they fight like crazy, but nobody eats them. Well, same thing with the cuda. They run all over the place. There's tons of them. They get really big. I caught one the other day on the kayak. It was well over 4 feet long. So, I mean, that was exciting, except when your butt's sitting in a kayak and the teeth are close. But it was really cool. I mean, I liked it. And I caught 9 of them that day. Caught 9 huge ones that day. And it was amazing. I was like, well, maybe I don't know. I'd like to get something else. But then again, when they jump and carry on like a cuda does, why? So I'm one of those guys that likes to have the rod bent and something on the end of the line. I don't care that much about what it is. I don't eat everything I catch, so I'm not food hunting. I guess that's where I differ from some other fishermen. Is I'm not really looking for food. And when I get a piece of food, I get a mangrove snapper or something. Absolutely, it's going in the bucket and I take it home. So anyway, the cudas are everywhere, and this notion of chumming is kind of really struck me as something that might work. I was thinking about this while I was sitting in the kayak on Thursday. Superstitions. It popped up from a couple of conversations I had with other people on the phone during the week, but it really kind of centered when I was hanging out, sitting there enjoying the gorgeous weather. The water is crystal clear right now, and I wasn't fishing. I was just kicking back, relaxing after I've been on the water for a couple hours, and I got to thinking about the superstitions of fishing and what people do to keep the fish coming. And okay, so most of you that are listening have probably heard about bananas. All right, bananas are bad. Bananas are not put on the boat. Bananas are so bad that the fishing show that I used to do called Real Talk Radio, the one I'm going to do next Saturday, they have banned the word on the show. Debbie insists that no one even say the word, because when it's said on the show, bad things happen, like the phone stop working, the text line goes dead, stuff like that related to the show. Well, in fishing, there are many, many anglers out there who think bananas are bad. You don't bring them on a boat. You don't bring them anywhere near fishing. You don't bring them in a lunch bag. You just don't have bananas on board. I'm not one of those. Okay, so I mean, there's lots of superstitions. I can go through a whole list: clothing, hats, your favorite shirt, mementos that you keep in your pocket, and things that you carry with you. Could even be a specific lure that you bring in your tackle box. You never use it. You don't want to lose it. But you got this lure that was so lucky it caught this monster fish. And so you carry it with you and hope, okay, so you got this lure that caught a fish, but then you don't use it again. What do you do, rub it? I mean, what? I don't understand. That special fishing rod. I ran into a guy not long ago. He has a fishing. Well, I was talking to the guy in a shop at one of the tackle shops, and he said, no, I got this rod that I keep on the boat and I don't use it, but it's my lucky rod. I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. So to me, bananas don't make sense either. And you have to look up the history of the banana and the problems it has with boaters. It's really funny. Nobody really knows why the banana is a problem on a boat as far as superstition is concerned. They have found that it dates back, way back, and they assume it came from the bananas that were carried on the gold ships back in the 1400s that came out of Mexico and South America that were sailed up and were wrecked here in the Florida Keys, the Atocha and things like that, down around the Dry Tortugas and the Marquesa Keys where all the wrecks are. And those boats all, of course, carried lots of bananas. You can't blame it on carrying gold. So you can't make gold unlucky. So you make the bananas unlucky. And I've read that a couple times, and I think that's probably part of it. But no, I don't. I'll take a banana on the boat. It's full of potassium and it's good for you. And for those that don't know it, if you go diving, diving, you generally almost always keep bananas, or at least eat them before you go diving, because the potassium helps keep you from getting the bends. It's essential. It's an energy thing. So anyway, I just find that hilarious. Do I have a superstitious? Yeah, I do. I have a hat. I adore. I wear it carefully. I put it away if it's windy. So yeah, okay. I know. I just poo-pooed bananas, and now I'm telling you the hat's okay. If you got a lucky scarf, you got something you want to do it if it makes you feel better. I honestly think it boils down to this. It's not superstition. It's confidence. Like the lure. Like all lures. If you throw something consistently and it works, it's confidence. You have confidence in that item. You have confidence in that hat. You have confidence that bananas suck. It's just, it's not a superstition thing. It's ingrained. And I have confidence in certain lures that I use all the time. I really do. So there you go. All right, let's change channels just a tad. We're going to talk about the lure. This is really cool. I was thinking about this. That's what I do, man. I'll be lying in bed looking at the ceiling fan, and I'm like, oh, what about this? What's the best lure? Florida lure. What is the best lure ever? Okay. Is it just a simple jig head? Is it a topwater? Is it something old like the hula popper? Is it, what is it? What is it? And for me, it's long been a lure called the love lure. If you remember this, you're old. If you don't, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Love's lure, L-U-V''S. The man's name was Mr. Love. That's who invented it in Clearwater, up in Clearwater, St. Pete area, years ago. And they named it Love's Lure. So it immediately shortened to the Love Lure, L-U-V-L-U-R-E. It had a yellow label on the package. It had a heart, like I love you, on it, which of course made sense for marketing. It usually contained 2 Love Lures in the package in tandem. Now, the Love Lure was nothing more than a soft plastic curly tail jig. Okay, so it had the rib top and then the little curl tail on the back end. And at the time, the only one you could get was a see-through pink. So it was pinkish. And there were 2 of them. They were tied in tandem, and they were tied with a little tiny pinkish red head on them. So they were basically jigs. They were, they caught fish like crazy. This tandem rig was just, my brother and I used it obsessively in the early days of fishing on Southwest Florida's coast. We learned about it through just watching the commercial guys out there. Years ago, you had commercial fishermen fishing in Pine Island Sound and around Sanibel, and of course all the way up into Clearwater for sea trout, when sea trout was legal, and legal for commercial. And they had these little boats. I'm not sure what they were called. There's a name for it, but I don't remember. They were about maybe 15 feet long, 14, 15, 16 feet long. They had a little, what sounded like a single cylinder engine in the middle, like a putt, 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 putt. It sounded like they were putting around. It was hilarious. I don't think they had reverse. I think they had forward only. They would move along about 2 to 3 miles an hour and perfect trolling speed. And they trolled for trout. And they used a Love Lure. I don't know if it was specifically the Love Lure, but it was exactly the same thing. It was a tandem, soft plastic on a jig head, towed at a certain distance. They didn't use reels on these. These rods were like I'm going to say bamboo, but you know what I mean. They didn't cast them. They trolled one on each corner of the stern of the boat, and when a trout grabbed it, or 2 trout in some cases, because it's a tandem rig, they would pull it in by hand, put the trout, if they were legal in the basket, legal length in the basket, and then throw the thing right back out there. And they would putt around out there. To this day, my brother and I still fish an area where we found these guys working, and it's still successful. We still catch trout in that area, especially in the springtime. So it's kind of cool, that's where the Love Lure came from. Then it progressed into other colors. It went to like a solid pink. Then there was a white one available, and then they had like a see-through yellow. It wasn't really chartreuse. It was really yellow, but again, like see-through. You add just a little bit of yellow to a clear plastic, and you get this color. But man, oh man, we sure caught a lot of them. So I did some research for this, which is what I love to do. Found that they closed years ago. The Love Lure fishing shop, the tackle shop, closed in St. Pete, I think is where they were, and disappeared. And I kept digging, and lo and behold, guess who sells a knockoff? It looks exactly like it. DOA. Yep, the DOA shrimp guy. the DOA everything guy. I couldn't believe it. Mark Nichols. I don't know if he bought the rights to it or how he got it, but it is essentially the same the same lure. It's called the Deadly Tandem. I have not tried them, but they are on my purchase list for sure. And as far as I can tell, they don't do any see-through colors on them anymore. They have basically, he's got pink. He's got every kind of color you can imagine, but he does have the pink, the white, which I think he calls glow. And I think there is a yellow one too, kind of a yellowy green. It's not chartreuse, but it's more in the yellow. So I found that fascinating. So I'm going to try it. Somewhere in the near future, I'll let you know how it goes. I'm going to order some from DOA and see if I can't get a few. But for me personally, fishing Southwest Florida and fishing the waters, we caught reds, snook, and trout on those things like crazy. Probably one of the biggest snook I ever caught in Shell Creek near Shell Point was on a loveler, a tandem loveler. Let's talk trolling, backcountry trolling, just for a few minutes. I am a big fan of Live Target, have been for quite some time. Haven't talked about it very much, but I put it back on the kayak last week and started messing around with it again. Live Target makes a series that I like. They're called the swimming lures, and what it is, they look exactly like bait. I mean, Live Target's known for making things match exactly a live creature. The swimming sardine and the swimming thread fin are the two that I use for obvious reasons. Sardines and thread fins are extremely popular baits in inshore water. They're found just about everywhere, especially on the West Coast down into the Florida Keys, and they work great. This bait's neat. It's a heavy plastic, soft plastic. Yeah, don't get me wrong, soft plastic, but it's dense and heavy, so it'll sink. And it has a hook already embedded in it, a hook eye already in it to tie the line onto. But the tail is what makes it unusual. The tail is flared in like a V at the end, it's flared. And so when it's pulled through the water, the tail wiggles back and forth, but not the main body. So just the tail looks just like a swimming fish, thus the swimming lure. It's incredible. 2 to 3 miles an hour. Cast it if you want. I do cast. I mean, I'll throw them along bushes and along the edges of mangroves, even in the open water, and reel it back at a medium speed. So you're mimicking about 2 to 3 miles an hour, which happens to be perfect on a kayak. Those of you that have never set a GPS up, I'm weird about that. I did. To see how fast I'm going when I pedal a kayak, a Hobie kayak, it runs at about 3 miles an hour, a little under, a little over, just depending on how much pressure you're putting on the pedals, but roughly 3 miles an hour. Perfect trolling speed. Same thing when I paddle. I put the pedals up, I take the paddle out and start paddling. You get almost exactly the same speed, about 2.5 to 3 miles an hour. So, perfect for trolling. Toss this lure out back, put the rod in a holder, and get ready because it works. It's really very effective. I was so tickled to find out that I could use this. Now, of course, I'm in Cuda land down here, Barracuda land, so I had to put a little piece of wire on to keep from losing a $8 or $9 lure. They're not cheap, by the way. So, but the process was great and it worked really, really well. So I'm going to start using them more and more. You can get pinfish knockoffs. You can get all kinds of other bait knockoffs that these folks have made, and they make shrimp. Live Target makes some really incredible lures. They really do. So I would highly recommend checking it out now that I've done that. But anyway, those things worked really good. Digging into the treasure trove of lures was interesting this week because I went out in the garage and I just started popping stuff open and looking in there, and it suddenly came to me that these lures have worked over time with me very, very well. But the reality is, it gets back to the confidence thing. Am I confident with using it? Oh, remember that? I saw that in a tray. Oh, gosh, I used to use those all the time. Why haven't I used it again? Because new stuff comes along and you start to lose that, that confidence thing. And I find that really weird, to be honest with you. While digging in the box, I found my topwaters. My favorite all-time lure is the Rapala Skitterwalk. I just love it. It's a knockoff of the old Zara Spook, for those of you that have used spooks for about 150 years. Just kidding. Well, they used to be carved out of wood, so yeah, it goes way, way back. The Rapala Skitterwalk was I'll call it a knockoff, but it really wasn't. It was a different design. It was a cigar bait. It's designed to be walk the dog on the surface, wagging it back and forth. What I realized when I first got into the Skitterwalk, which is probably 9 or 10 years ago when I started using the first ones, it was easier to make it walk. Plain and simple. If you are used to a Zara spook, great, you can use a Zara spook. I found that standing on a boat upright or standing on a beach was easier than sitting in the kayak with the Zara spook. It was easier with the Rapala Skitterwalk now. But back when I first started using the Skitterwalk, it was just easier to walk. It was much more easy to maneuver. There's another one called the Bomber makes one called the Badonkadonk. A friend of mine, Mike, uses that. Got me kind of hooked on it. Actually, I was using it before I fished with him, but nowhere near as much as he does. That's another top water that walks, but it's got an additional set of beads inside that makes a clacking sound, a heavy clacking sound. And it rests kind of butt down. The back, when you stop, the back end kind of sinks a little bit slow. Man, fish will cream that thing if it's fished properly. It's really something. At this point, I must mention, get this out, bucktail jigs. The very first bucktail jigs that I was introduced to, believe it or not, was way back in the U.S. Coast Guard days. So I got in the Coast Guard in 73, and I spent 6 years, 4 active and 2 reserve. And we did a lot of training. You not only did you train through boot camp, but when you got done with boot camp, you went to schools to train even more. A lot of it was search and rescue. A lot of it was resuscitation. Rescuing people basically is what it was about. That's what the Coast Guard did, and patrols. Patrolling for drugs and things like that. So it was kind of you worked for the Department of Transportation back then. It was not Homeland Security. So our job was saving your life. That's mostly what we did. And we had these this little packet thing. I don't know how to describe it. It was full of like things to keep you alive if your boat went down and you're sitting in a raft, or you're sitting on the back of your boat and it's flooded and there's no way, or it's broken down and you're not going anywhere for days until somebody finds you. The helicopters would drop this packet to you, and it was a little soft packet that had stuff in it. And one of the things in it for survival, besides water and things like that, or a water maker, were bucktail jigs. As I remember, the one I saw in class had 3 bucktail jigs in it. They were the classic bucktail. They had a red head and a white bucktail. Simple hook. There was some hand line in there on a hand line spool, so you could catch fish from your raft or whatever and survive on fish. There you go. If it's going to wind up in a survival pack, then it probably works. That was my philosophy as a young man and just into the Coast Guard. I'm 19 and wet behind the ears. So it's like, oh, a bucktail. Wow. Well, I never stopped using it after that. It was, it went to Kentucky with me. It went down to Florida again, back into Fort Myers. And of course, on the other, I've always had a bucktail jig, and I found that in the tackle box when I was searching, several of them, as a matter of fact. The one I used was Hank Brown, which I don't think Hank Brown lures are around anymore. I think they're called something else, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what it is, but there's tons of bucktails. So just think along the lines of white and red. That was the classic. They make all kinds of stuff now. Browns, yellows, greens, blues, just every color. And they even make lots and lots of colors, of course, in the bucktail. It's no longer conveniently white. But it's really amazing how much of that stuff is available out there. And I'm going to put that back in the kayak. I'm putting it back in there. I saw several of them in my package the other day, and I said, okay, set those aside. I know they work. I know barracudas are going to eat them. That's probably the only problem I'm going to have. But if I get into an area where other fish are showing up, I'm certainly going to throw those. Fishing rods. I have a lot of rods. It's kind of nuts. And a couple weeks ago, I guess it was a couple weeks ago, I mentioned the rod shop in my tackle hunt. And I picked up a rod from them called the Long Cast, which I've been using on my most recent trips. And it's been really great. I love it. However, I still like my other rods. And so I was kind of weighing this out when I was on the kayak this past Thursday. I've started switching up and using the rods for different things. The long rod does exactly what it says. The long cast. It does what it says. It's a long cast rod. It's about 4 to 5 inches longer than anything else I have in my arsenal. So I'm going to say it's probably about 7.4, 7.5 maybe. And it will throw a lure a mile. It's amazing how it loads, and its capability of throwing a lightweight lure is very, very amazing. I like it a lot. It was for open water. It's where I started to adapt and get it away from the mangroves. I kept throwing it in the mangroves. I would overpower it. And it was hard to lay down a casting like sideways or parallel to the water from the kayak. I like to skip baits. It was almost too powerful for that. So it was more of an open water. I switched back to the rods that I've been using a lot, the Fitzgeralds, which are shorter. They're under 7 feet. They're about 6'7", I would say. Those rods were much easier for me to skip baits and to work baits up under mangrove and close to mangrove. So now I have kind of an arsenal that I can use and a reason for it. But I'm not by any means, I'm sure the rod shop probably makes a Key Largo rod that's fits the other one, fits the Fitzgerald in a way. Fitzgeralds came about. The Fitzgeralds, if you want to check them out, they make the rod I use is called the Aqua Dream, and it's fantastic. When I got that, that's all they made in spinning rods because the Fitzgeralds came from the bass fishing world in Florida, and so he made a lot of bait casters. He didn't really make any spinning rods, and then all of a sudden the spinning rods showed up, and that thing is fantastic. I'm not going to kid you. I love fishing the Aqua Dream. I have a couple of them now. They're typically like a custom rod. You're going to pay $250 to $300 for it, just like you are on the Key Largo rods. So price is comparable, but it's just different because it's shorter and snappier, and so I'm able to get that lure where I want it to go. Fitzgerald now, I looked it up. Fitzgerald now has about four or five different spin models. So obviously the interest in his rod has taken off, the Aqua Dream, and he's built other models for specific saltwater fishing. So you check out their site. But Fitzgerald is the name of the rod company, and they're out of Florida. Before that, and when I was guiding, I was a St. Croix freak, and I still love St. Croix. I have several of them still in my rod collection, a couple of Avids, and there were other rods. You got to remember now, I started guiding 20 some odd years ago, and St. Croix was one of my first rods. So they were just great. I think it was called the Tidewater, I believe is the first one I had. And the Tidewater was a fabulous rod. But over time, they've moved on to other models. I looked it up. The latest one is the Mojo series, and I saw those when I was up at ICAST. They even have a Mojo kayak, but the only one they have in that is a bait caster that I can tell. They don't have a spin rod in the Mojo kayak yet. Maybe that's coming along, or maybe I didn't see it when I was searching. But the Mojo line of spin rods is in there. So I'm going to have to get my hands on one of those and try it and see what that's like, because I was using St. Croix for a very long time. Great rods, excellent rods. Reels, don't worry about it. If you fish in salt water, spend $200 to $300. You'll be fine. The reel, it's incredible how many there are now. I go for lightweight, so I like graphite versus metal. I like something that'll hold up in salt water. I like something that'll stop a big fish, but the reel itself is not physically monstrous. There you go. And those are available. Quantum makes one that I use right now called the Smoke. I love it. It's got a great drag. It'll stop a big fish, and it doesn't weigh nothing. I like something I can cast all day long and not wear my arm out, because I'm a caster. I'm a caster and a reeler, so there you go. I could get into a whole thing on reels, but I thought I would just simplify that for you. Back to the rods for a second. Trying a rod out in a parking lot ain't going to get it, all right? You're going to have to go out on a boat and fish it. You can try it and see how it feels and hold it and how it balances and do all that stuff on land, but the real test for a rod is on the water, and you're not really going to know how it loads properly. So in other words, how easy is it to cast a lure a distance by the way the rod, you're not really going to know that until you actually get it out on the water. So be sure to understand that when you're going shopping for rods. It's tough. It's not an easy thing to pick one out. When you find one you like, stick with it. When I was guiding, I carried all the same rods. I had like 6 of the same thing on the boat all the time with a couple in reserve. The reason for that was I was casting for people a lot when I was guiding. And if you pick up the same rod over and over again and it does exactly the same thing, you know where the lure is going to go. You know where the bait's going to wind up every time you throw it. That applies to those of you that are not guide captains. If you're fishing a kayak or a boat, it really helps a lot if you stick to the same kind of rod for everything you do. That way you're not ever going to be mystified by, gosh, I overthrew that, or gosh, I threw that too short. The rod is going to load and do pretty much the same thing for everything that you do on the water with it every time you cast. Before I go, here's a quick reminder to those of you. I have a new book out called Take a Kid Fishing, an adult's guide for introducing those youngsters of yours to the world of angling. It's available on my website at catchoutdoors.com. Go to the site and then click on page 4 to order. You can also get them now on Amazon Kindle. Yay! There are lots of references to Take a Kid Fishing on there. I found when I was doing the searches. So stick my name in there, stick Rob Mody's in there, and it'll come up a whole lot easier when you're searching for the title. Remember, the ones on Amazon Kindle are not signed copies. You can get both the, like I said, Amazon printed books as well as the Kindle books from that. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. My podcasts are scheduled for each and every Tuesday. If you enjoyed listening, please tell a friend, leave a review, and please subscribe to the channel. Catch Outdoors is presented by the Waypoint Podcast Network. It's available on Waypoint and many of your favorite podcast providers. The Facebook page is Catch Outdoors, website waypointtv.com, and catchoutdoors.com. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.